Al-Jaafari stresses that the crisis in Syria has yielded odd and inhumane phenomena which contradict with the Syrian people's values and international charters. And the Russian Foreign Ministry criticizes the United States Secretary of State's proposal on transporting chemical weapons from Syria. And at least 19 Iraqis killed in several terrorist attacks. Good afternoon, this is news in English from the Syrian Television in Damascus. Syria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Bashar al-Jaafari, stressed that Syria is one of the pioneering countries in the Arab and Islamic worlds in ensuring all requirements for enabling women and empowering them and improving their situation. Al-Jaafari said in a speech at the United Nations Security Council's session on women, rule of law and transitional justice that the crisis in Syria has exuded odd and inhumane phenomena which contradict with the Syrian people's values and international charters. He added that women in Syria assume the vice president post, while in some countries they are prevented from driving a car. Al-Jaafari asserted that those countries will spare no effort through offering money to undermine the socio-economic security and legislative progress in Syria for subjugating its independent national political decision. Al-Jaafari expressed Syria's deep concern over the deterioration of the security situation in the camps which host the displaced Syrians in neighboring countries, indicating that the Syrian women and girls are suffering from the highest levels of insecurity in addition to being exposed to violations against humanity like rape and illegal marriage. The Russian Foreign Ministry criticized the United States Secretary of State John Kerry's proposal on transporting chemical weapons from Syria aboard ships outside the region to be dismantled there. The ministry said that it is premature to talk about specific issues regarding the dismantling of chemical weapons, as the working group in charge of destroying chemical weapons in Syria is currently meeting in The Hague to discuss various techniques for doing so. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu stressed that the Syrian crisis and the latest events there questioned the United Nations' role, asserting that the efforts exerted by the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Russian diplomatic steps affirm the necessity of bringing back the active role of the United Nations. Shoigu clarified in a statement to journalists in Moscow that the Syrian crisis raised a great concern in the whole world due to the increasing tensions, especially after the American and Western threats to launch an aggression against Syria. Shoigu considered that direct communication between Russia and its allies in South America in the framework of technical military cooperation is not related to the crisis in Syria. Minister of Information Amran Zoubi affirmed that the scene in Syria became crystal clear to all with regard to the nature of the conflict and the conflicting parties. In an article published in a thorough newspaper under the title of Reading the Syrian Scene, Zoubi said that this scene was part of a regional scene in which stories of the so-called Arab Spring and the People's Revolution were narrated, enabling extremists to assume power in Egypt, Libya and Tunisia. Zoubi stressed that the political tracks were the first option for the Syrian state from the very beginning of the aggression. In our local news, a number of citizens were wounded as a terrorist blew himself up inside a car bomb on the entrance of Jalamana city in Damascus countryside. An official source said that the suicide terrorist blew himself up inside a car bomb with big quantity of explosive in the surrounding of Tamico Company for Medical Industries, injuring 15 citizens, the majority of them in a critical condition. The source added that the explosion caused big material damage to the citizens' properties in the place. Meanwhile, a source at the police command in Damascus countryside said that terrorists targeted with mortar shells the houses of civilians in the neighborhoods of Al-Homsi, Al-Nasim, Al-Tlaili and Al-Tirba in Jalamana, causing the injury of a woman and a young man. A military source said that the Syrian Arab Army units clashed with armed terrorist groups that tried to attack Aleppo central prison and killed and injured all the assailants and destroyed their weapons. According to the sources, all members of the terrorist groups were killed and wounded in Asfira, the area surrounding cotton gins, a tractor's factory, and villages of Al-Jdeide, Queris, and Rasm al-Aboud. The source added that an army unit clashed with a terrorist group while trying to sneak into Dhahrat Abd Rabbo in Al-Liramoun and killed all the group members. A military source said that units of the armed forces carried out a series of operations in the villages of Al-Hamidiyya and the surrounding of Wadi Daif in Idlib countryside, destroying dozens of tunnels with all weapons and ammunition inside them, killing all terrorists inside them. The source added that terrorist attempts to remotely detonate 11 explosive devices weighing between 25 to 50 kilograms planted in the area surrounding Wadi Daif was foiled. Army units eliminated all members of an armed terrorist group and destroyed their weapons and ammunition north of Abu Dhur Airport, Kafr Nubul, Majdaliya, and Sirja in Idlib countryside. Moving to Homs, where the Syrian Arab Army units eliminated armed terrorist groups and destroyed a number of hideouts and an anti-aircraft machine gun in several villages and towns. Military sources clarified that the Syrian Arab Army units killed or injured members of armed terrorist groups in Al-Warsha, Al-Hamidiyya, and Qurba al-Khazin neighborhoods in Al-Dar al-Kabira village and destroyed their weapons and ammunition. The Syrian Arab Army also eliminated 20 terrorists who were in a vehicle in Ash-Shumariya mountain in Homs countryside and destroyed an anti-aircraft machine gun and varieties of ammunition. At least 19 people were killed in several terrorist attacks in Iraq. 12 people were killed when a car bomb exploded in a street full of shoppers in an eastern Baghdad neighborhood. Police officials said that the blast took place in the capital's Mashtal neighborhood. The blast occurred near an ice cream shop as people were getting out, marking the last day of Eid al-Adha. A spokesperson for the Iraqi Ministry of Interior said that unknown gunmen killed a mother and her 3 children in their house in Al-Mosul. In Baqouba, 2 people were killed and 5 others wounded as a result of a terrorist blast to the north of the city. A man was killed near a checkpoint for As-Sahwa forces. With this, we come to the end of our news for today. More details on our website, www.syriaonline.sy. Animal feed and the latest in Syrian agriculture and things to be distributed to Syrian farmers, in addition to other news in our economic news, but after the break.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Ministry of Agriculture asserted that it has completed producing seedling for the upcoming agricultural season. The manager of the Plant Production Department at the Ministry said that the distributed plantations in the governorates have produced about 2 million plants, noting that the Ministry is committed to provide the farmers with the basic agricultural needs. The Councillor of the Agricultural Chambers Union has asked the government to work on improving the agricultural fodder for animals. As Syria produces about 13 million tons of fodder annually, the Councillor also added that the fodder establishment should establish a factory for using the agricultural fodder to produce feed mixtures for cattle. The U.S. Treasury Department announced that the level of the U.S. debt exceeded the legal limit, which was resolved in the congressional deal on Wednesday to suspend the nation's $16.7 trillion debt ceiling. On the other hand, the Republicans and Democrats should reach an agreement about the budget and raise the debt limit for funding the government and avoid a new partial shutdown of the U.S. government institutions. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has hailed the policy adopted by Russia's central bank and the Russian government, which resulted in huge revenues for the Russian economy. He further said that such policy helped to ease the burden of debts, giving the Russian ruble more flexibility in terms of exchange rate and recording satisfactory averages of inflation. It is to be noted that Russia's reserves of gold and hard currency have recorded their highest level in August 2008, exceeding $590 billion. Russian Company for Oil, Rosneft, and Chinese National Company for Oil, CNBC, have signed an agreement to develop oil wells east of Siberia and to cooperate to exploit oil reserves. According to the agreement, Rosneft will have a 51% share of the mutual project, whereas CNBC will have a 49% share, which will help China develop its oil wealth, as it is one of the biggest importers of oil. The agreement reflects a growing Russian-Chinese economic and scientific cooperation. U.S. stocks rose for the week, sending the Standard & Poor's 500 index to a record high, while European stocks rallied for a second week as Republicans and Democrats agreed to raise the U.S. sovereign debt ceiling and reopen the federal government. Gold futures fell from a one-week high as the rally in global equities curbed demand for the precious metal as an alternative investment. Gold futures for December delivery fell 0.6% to settle at $1,314 an ounce. The US dollar slid to the weakest since February, as appetite for higher-yielding assets rose on bets that the Federal Reserve will delay tapering stimulus after a last-minute deal pushed the political battle over US spending into 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, this was our economic news for today. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.